What's up everybody, I'm Adam of ZoinkMeister, and today we're going over my platinum and review for Control by Remedy Games. Let's jump into it. Control centers around protagonist Jessie Faden, a woman who's been searching for the greater half of her life for the Federal Bureau of Control, aka the FBC, which is a secret government agency that deals with supernatural phenomenon and supernatural objects known as altered items. She has yearned for the truth behind the Bureau and its secrets ever since her brother was abducted by them during a supernatural incident that occurred when they found an altered item known as the slide projector that caused an altered world event in their hometown of Ordinary back when they were children. Our story begins when Jessie stumbles upon the secret headquarters of the FBC known as the Oldest House. She is led to this location by a supernatural presence that speaks to her telepathically that has been with her ever since the altered world event we spoke of earlier. As she attempts to explore the old house, she walks into a series of events that lead to her being entrusted with the title of Director. The director of the FBC has access to the service weapon, a projectile-based, altered item that can change its form. With this new weapon, she has to defeat a supernatural force known as the Hiss, which has taken over the FBC, as well as try to uncover the secrets behind what happened to her brother. That about sums up the game in terms of an abstract. Let's jump into some notable plot points. Let's start with the protagonist, Jessie Faden. I like her. She gives off a sensible and realistic human vibe. All of her dialogue and mannerisms, as well as her internal thoughts, all come together to make a character that I've come to enjoy. Her normality and humanistic approach to non-humanistic events really work well with the narrative. Speaking of, the narrative direction and how they approach storytelling is really nice. The constant intrigue of the FBC makes for a beautiful canvas to tell great sci-fi stories. The entirety of the game fills you with a sense of discovery and provides the grounds for a deep dive into the world of Control. Throughout the game, there are many different collectibles that support the overarching plot, such as familiar indexes, audio logs, video recordings, stuff of that nature. Finding and reading through these collectibles provides a much appreciated underlining for the Control universe. These collectible snips of data incentivize exploration, since if you're like me, you'll be craving more and more of the interesting narrative and world building they set into place. Each of the many altered items mentioned earlier all have their own events that are tied to interesting real-world events in this so-called Remedy universe. I say Remedy universe instead of Control universe because there is a collectible file which explains that the flashlight used in one of the previous games, Alan Wake, is actually an altered item. It's really fascinating that the central mechanic of another game has been revealed to fit in the narrative of this game. I find that really cool. Finally, I think it's worth mentioning with the constant intrigue between Jessie and the FBC mirrors the real-life intrigue between the thought of the common citizen and the real-life possibility of world governments concealing extremely classified information from the world. I feel like the game expands on the player's natural curiosity for the real-world government cover-ups and intensifies the feeling of uncovering the truth. Basically, if you're into conspiracy theories, this game is going to hit you real good. Control has one of the best physics-based environmental destruction systems I've ever experienced. The beautiful way in which cover barricades you've chosen to hide behind get shredded by bullets and the nice additional particle physics that are added in every time you rip a piece of concrete out of the floor to throw at an enemy are just scrumptious. The game also has a nice attention to facial animations during in-engine cutscenes that really do distance itself from other games. Another interesting touch to Control is the inclusion of live-action cutscene segments in the game to display important backlore. These usually comprise of Dr. Darling's video logs that help fill in the gaps of the events leading up to the FBC's downfall. Very nice. Now let's move on to the design of the world. Control takes place in a giant altered object called the Oldest House, as discussed earlier. This is basically a giant building that, within the confines of the Control universe, cannot be seen by the regular person unless they are specifically looking for it. The Oldest House features a world that is both horizontal and vertical. However, the verticality won't be prevalent until the latter half of the game. The design of the environment is an interesting match. It's a series of office spaces mixed in with experimental government facilities. Although the aesthetics are nice, I wish the variations and environmental differences were more pronounced. Basically, I wish there was more color in at least one area that had a radically different design choice. The molded lower level threshold area almost scratches this itch, but the lack of emotion and the copy-paste design down here causes it to fall short. However, the collectibles and the feeling of having secrets around every corner gives a constant craving to explore. The back lore found in all of the indexes and logs are a really fun read and honestly add a great incentive to sweep through an area very thoroughly. However, this is a big however, the map is awful. The map used is a weird layered but still 2D display that fights itself when trying to display even the most basic of waypoints. It really is not optimized for verticality, let alone tracking down specific rooms to complete objectives. Now let's jump into the real issue with Control as a whole. This game is riddled with performance issues, specifically all over the console variants of this game. About a week or less from launch, Remedy released a performance patch that was to help remove a lot of these issues, but the issues themselves still occur, just at a less constant manner. There was still heavy frame dropping segments when a lot of action is happening on screen, in-game cutscenes would occasionally freeze, texture pop would occur when walking into new areas, and at some points during heavy narrative cutscenes, somehow anti-aliasing would appear to turn off and characters would get very jagged and sharp while talking. Honestly, these are bearable but infuriating and will definitely accumulate to be the majority of Control's issues. In terms of game-breaking bugs, I only encountered one. Randomly during gameplay, when nothing was happening of any importance, the game kicked me back to the PlayStation home screen, citing an unknown error had occurred. When I relaunched the game, I was informed that due to data corruption, my file and all related data could not be loaded. At first, I was extremely upset, but luckily a cloud save from PlayStation that just happened to have uploaded 20 minutes before allowed me to re-download my last hard save and picked up exactly where I left off. Granted, this was prior to the performance update, and nothing of that caliber nor any other halting issues as such have occurred. Still, it's scary to imagine that I almost lost everything so easily. So thank you, PlayStation, you once again have saved me in my time of need. Control features an interesting combat system behind the service weapon and your abilities. An elegant dance between the two builds a combat flow that is very satisfying and feels empowering. There are only 5 weapons and 5 powers in the game, and yet that doesn't seem to limit you because they're all so much fun to use. In fact, your powers use up a meter quickly, which will force you to switch to your weapons, which oddly enough never run out of ammo but do require reload time when used, thus forcing you to go back to your powers. It may sound tedious, but it actually builds a nice rhythm to gameplay that demands effort and rewards you with fun. The beauty of the telekinesis and the levitation design are especially eye-catching. A pairing of map design and gameplay becomes more appeasing due to the game opening up with verticality as you achieve levitation. Suddenly, certain areas that appear to be shallow as a whole have a secondary discovery aspect to them that makes re-exploring the areas much more fun. Control also implements a modification system to both Jessie and her service weapon. The personal mods that Jessie can equip to herself are cool, but are honestly pretty forgettable due to the lack of depth. These vary from using less of your ability bar for your powers or possibly regaining a small amount of health back when picking up items, but nothing really shines. The weapon mods, however, are way more pronounced. Improved accuracy, extra projectiles fired with every shot, faster reloading speeds, extra damage when levitating, extra damage when low on health, and many other of the sort are actually really important and are definitely welcome. You can also upgrade your weapon with certain materials, but all this does is add an additional slot for mods to be applied. There's not even an aesthetic difference when upgrading, so the feeling of accomplishment is pretty non-existent. Regardless, all these different gameplay elements wrap together to build a fun and flowing gameplay feeling that is very fun and a nice display of game physics. It's a good thing gameplay is fun because you'll be fighting a lot in this game. In fact, Control has a very interesting philosophy behind its interaction with enemies. High risk, high reward. Basically, enemies can be eliminated very quickly, but even beginning enemies can deal quite a bit of damage if hit in sequence. To add to the difficulty factor, enemies spawn from seemingly nowhere at times in small squads, which can pose a challenge if there isn't much to cover behind. This, added with the fact that health cannot be found, can only be recovered from downed enemies, ups the difficulty. You also can't absorb health from a distance, and it never really recovers too much health at one time. Combing the battlefield after a fight might bring you back to 50% if you're thorough. I enjoyed the small difficulty segments, but that's my personal opinion. The campaign was short, but it didn't really feel like it. I did complete a bunch of extra content outside the main story, of course, but even so, the game had a nice, respectable runtime and boasted a constant attention-grabbing campaign by using a focus on intrigue and fun gameplay. Without giving any spoilers, the ending is abrupt, and what would be the final boss encounter kind of ended on a low note due to essentially not having one. It's more of just a rush of enemies leading up to a narrative batch of cutscenes. The game's story also ends pretty open-ended as to allow either a sequel or just the end of the series. If there is a sequel, I'll definitely jump into it. I really enjoyed it. Now let's jump into the extra content. This game has lots and lots of collectibles, and honestly, they aren't really much of a chore to collect. There are tons of different indexes, Black Ops mission details, altered world event reports, and various video media to collect in the world that all add up to a wonderful intrigue to Control's lore. There are also optional hidden bosses scattered throughout the oldest house that are fun to track down and eliminate. They are not crucial to the story, but they do continue to add layers to the world's lore. I highly recommend you track them down and give them a go because I had a lot of fun tracking these baddies down, and I'm sure you will too. Finally, the completion details. By the end of my playthrough, I acquired all main missions completed, all side missions, all ability upgrades, all hidden bosses defeated, all outfits including the special PlayStation DLC Astral Dive suit, and of course, all trophies. The game took me roughly 10 hours to complete the main story, and about 25 if you want to grab all the trophies. My playthrough ended just short of one more weapon upgrade and about 50 more indexes before achieving 100% completion, but I had difficulty using online guides for said collectibles due to the horrendous in-game map as discussed earlier. If I had to sum up the difficulty for this game, it'd probably be medium difficulty. Finally, let's review. Control was fun, and it's a very interesting mix of gameplay and backlore and intrigue, and I really just overall enjoyed the world that I was thrown into. However, a lot small difficulties, usually technical, really hold this game back from where it should shine. By the end of the day, I'd have to give this game my final review of B. Well guys, that's been my video. I really do appreciate you watching this. Please like if you liked. Drop a comment down below if anything you thought, if you liked the game, if you have anything that you think I missed, anything like that. Please keep toxicity low. If you really liked the video, please subscribe. Me and Patrick work really hard on all of our videos. I'm sorry this one took so long from the initial early impressions video I released earlier, but I had some, issues putting this one together in terms of quality. I didn't like my first couple recordings, so I'm sorry it took so long, but I really do appreciate your patience. Thank you. You have a great day. It's been Adam of ZoinkMeister. Zoink out.